Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some pretty intense stuff today. Ancient atonement
Oh
rituals.
yeah, definitely intense.
We'll be looking specifically at Leviticus chapter 16 from the King James Bible.
Right.
So before we get too deep into it, atonement, what does that even mean?
Basically, it's about making amends for, doing something wrong. It's about purifying yourself,
Yeah.
becoming right in the eyes of the divine.
Okay, so like trying to get back in good standing.
Exactly.
And in this case, we're talking about the ancient Israelites, right?
Oh, right?
And let me tell you, their methods were, well, a bit more involved than just saying a quick sorry.
Yeah, a bit. We're talking animal sacrifices, a mysterious scapegoat, even the high priest going into the Holy of Holies.
It's wild, and the chapter really starts off with a bang, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right off the bat, you have the story of Aaron's sons,
Right.
and they die
Yeah.
because they didn't offer sacrifices properly.
Yeah, it's like a warning right from the start, like, hey, pay attention, this is serious stuff.
Yeah, no messing around with these rituals. They were a big deal.
So then we're introduced to Aaron, who is the high priest, and he gets very specific instructions on exactly how to perform this atonement ritual.
It's almost like a divine protocol, like a step-by-step guide from God. And, even the preparation is super detailed. Aaron has to wear these special linen garments as a symbol of purity and humility.
And then there's the whole ritual cleansing before he can even enter the holy place.
Right. Emphasizing the sacredness of what he's about to do.
Okay, so let's talk sacrifices.
Right.
What kind of animals are we dealing with here?
Okay, so we've got a bull, but that's specifically for Aaron's own sins and the sins of his household.
Got it.
And then there are two goats, and those are for the sins of the whole community, all the Israelites.
Okay, so the bull's like the VIP sacrifice.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And then there's a ram as well. That one's for a burnt offering.
It's interesting how each animal seems to have its own specific meaning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the bull, it's a strong, powerful animal, so maybe it represents the weight of Aaron's responsibilities as high priest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the goats, they were more common everyday animals.
Right.
So maybe they represent like the everyday sins of the people.
Okay, so two goats for everybody's sins. And then there's this whole thing with casting lots, right?
Oh yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
Right. So they basically roll the dice to decide the fate of each goat.
Exactly. One goat is chosen for the Lord,
Okay.
and the other one, well, that one becomes the scapegoat.
And the scapegoat, that's a whole other can of worms.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's like, it's full of suspense, you know? Like, which goat's gonna get which fate? It almost seems random, like fate playing a role or something.
Yeah, like who decides? Is it all predetermined, or is there some element of chance involved?
Yeah, big questions. Okay, so let's break down what actually happens to each goat.
Okay,
The goat for the Lord, that one's sacrificed, really.
right. It's a sin offering.
Okay, and Aaron has to take its blood into the Holy of Holies. That's like the most sacred spot in the whole tabernacle, right?
Absolutely. And he sprinkles the blood on the mercy seat.
On the what?
The mercy seat. It's basically this golden lid on top of the Ark of the Covenant. It's a pretty powerful image.
Yeah, it is. But what does the blood represent here?
Well, in many ancient cultures, blood represented life force, vitality.
Okay.
So by putting the blood on the mercy seat, Aaron is basically transferring the life force of the goat to cleanse the space and to atone for the people's sins.
So it's like a symbolic cleansing.
Right. Trying to restore balance and harmony.
That makes sense. But now let's get to the scapegoat. This is where things get really interesting.
It is pretty wild, isn't it?
So, unlike the other goat, the scapegoat actually gets to live.
That's right.
But it doesn't exactly get off scot-free.
No, not at all.
Because Aaron confesses all the Israelite sins, and then he puts them on the scapegoat's head, literally. Like, it's carrying all their bad stuff.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? Almost like they're physically transferring their guilt onto this animal.
It's like saying, okay, all our problems, all our bad deeds, onto you, goat. Get out of here.
It really highlights this human need to externalize blame, to find someone or something else to blame for our problems. And that makes you wonder, do we still do that today?
Oh, that's a great question, because even today we see examples of scapegoating all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, whether it's blaming certain groups of people for social problems or just finding easy targets to avoid taking responsibility.
Yeah, it makes you think, have we really moved that far from sending a goat into the wilderness to carry away our sins?
I mean, we might not be using goats anymore, but the psychological impulse behind it, it seems like it's still there.
It's something that's worth thinking about for sure.
Absolutely. But before we get totally lost in the wilderness with that scapegoat, there are still other parts of this ritual we need to explore.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We still have to talk about the purification rituals and what they meant, and of course, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement itself.
It seems like every element of this ritual is just packed with meaning and symbolism.
There's definitely a lot to unpack here. That scapegoat wandering off into the wilderness with all those sins, such a vivid image. Do you think they actually believed that sending the goat away, like, magically got rid of their sins?
I mean, that's a question scholars have been debating for centuries. Did they think it was literal? Or was it more about, like a symbolic act?
Right.
A way to deal with their guilt, but not actually, taking full responsibility?
But maybe it was more about the feeling, the act of getting rid of something bad.
Exactly. And it's fascinating because that scapegoat becomes the focus of all their guilt. Like it's the embodiment of everything they want to get rid of.
Yeah. It's almost like they're saying, okay, all our bad stuff, all our mistakes, onto you, goat. And now, get lost.
It's a pretty powerful image, isn't it? And it makes you think about that human tendency, that need to shift blame. Like, is that something we're just hardwired to do?
It's a bit unsettling, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because even today we see it everywhere. In politics, social issues, even in our own family sometimes. There's always that temptation to find someone else to blame.
It's like we're constantly searching for that easy way out.
Yeah.
That quick fix that lets us avoid looking at our own actions.
So let's play with that idea for a minute. If we were to, apply this scapegoat concept to today's world, what would it look like? What are our modern day scapegoats?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be so many things. It could be, specific people or groups.
Right.
Or even just these vague ideas like the system or the media.
Yeah, yeah. Anytime you see blame being thrown around, especially unfairly, it makes you wonder, are we just seeing a different form of that scapegoat ritual playing out?
And, it's not just about placing blame, right?
Right.
It's about avoiding responsibility and not dealing with the real issues.
Like, it's easier to point fingers than to actually try to fix things.
Exactly. The scapegoat becomes this distraction, this way to avoid dealing with the hard stuff.
Okay, so we've talked about the negative side of the scapegoat idea, but what about the other side?
Right.
What about the part about cleansing and renewal? How does that translate to us today?
Well, that's where things get a little more hopeful, I think.
Okay.
Because even though this whole ritual might seem very ancient and strange, the desire for cleansing, for a fresh start, that's something that's pretty universal.
Right. It's not just an ancient Israelite thing.
No, not at all. It's something you see throughout history across cultures.
And it's not just in religion either. It's like there are secular versions of this too, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, think about apologizing, making amends, trying to earn forgiveness.
Right.
Those are all ways we try to cleanse ourselves.
Yeah, like trying to make things right when we've messed up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like resetting our moral compass.
And it makes me think about things like, therapy or counseling.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Those can be seen as forms of atonement in a way.
Absolutely. You're confronting your inner demons,
Right.
trying to heal and become whole again.
And even things like, doing community service or giving to charities. Like we're trying to give back to balance out the bad stuff we might have done.
It's a way of expressing that desire for a better world.
So even though these rituals might seem so far removed from us, they do touch on some very human, very basic desires, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
The need to own up to our mistakes, to seek forgiveness, and to find that path to renewal. It's something we all go through in some way.
It really is a journey we all share, isn't it?
It is. But before we get too far down that road, we still have one big piece of this puzzle to talk about. Yom Kippur.
Ah, yes. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
It's like the climax of everything we've been discussing, right?
It really is.
But I have to admit, I've always found the whole idea of Yom Kippur a little hard to grasp.
Yeah.
Is it just a day of, saying you're sorry for everything you did wrong?
Well, it's definitely more than just saying sorry.
Okay, so what is it then?
Yom Kippur is about really acknowledging your imperfections.
All right.
Confronting those things about yourself that, aren't so great.
Okay.
And making that conscious effort to do better. To actually change your behavior.
So it's about personal transformation.
Exactly. But it's not just about you as an individual.
Okay.
Yom Kippur is also about the community.
Right.
It's about restoring harmony, not just within yourself, but within the whole community.
So there's this collective aspect to it as well.
Absolutely. It's about acknowledging that, we're all connected
Right.
and that our actions have an impact on everyone around us.
So it's a day of really deep reflection, both inward and outward.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about taking responsibility for what you've done and actively trying to make things right.
And even though it's a specifically Jewish tradition, I can see how the ideas behind it could resonate with anyone, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, taking stock of your life, admitting your mistakes, asking for forgiveness, those are universal human themes.
It's like a universal reset button almost.
Exactly.
But before we hit that reset button and wrap up our deep dive here, there's one more piece of this ancient ritual that I want to explore.
Okay.
The blood sacrifice. I know it's a sensitive topic, but it was such a central part of these rituals that I think we need to try to understand it.
You're right. It's definitely a sensitive topic,
Yeah.
but it's also essential to understanding the whole picture.
So let's talk about it. What did the blood symbolize to them? And how does that connect to all these ideas of atonement and purification that we've been talking about?
Okay, so blood sacrifice, like why?
Right.
Why was that such a big deal in these ancient rituals?
Well, you have to remember, blood had a totally different meaning back then. It wasn't just, something inside your body.
It was like the essence of life itself,
Oh, wow.
the thing that connected humans to the divine.
So sacrificing an animal, it wasn't just a random act.
Oh, no, not at all. It was deeply symbolic.
Okay.
They were offering the most precious thing, life itself,
Wow.
as a way to atone for their sins, to try and get back in good standing with God.
I get it, but it's still a hard thing to really grasp,
I understand.
Yeah.
It's definitely not something we're used to in our modern world.
Yeah.
But I think the key is to remember that their whole worldview was different.
All right.
They saw the world in a way that we just don't anymore. The lines between humans and the divine, the physical and the spiritual, it was all much more blurred.
So we have to try to see it through their eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Try to understand it within their context.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But even then, even if you get the symbolism, it's still pretty intense.
Oh, I agree. It's definitely not something we can easily condone today.
Right.
But I think it's important to see that the whole picture, the complexity of these rituals,
Okay.
they were brutal, yes.
Yeah.
But they were also beautiful in a way. They were terrifying, but they were also awe-inspiring. They really spoke to the deepest parts of the human experience.
So it seems like even though it was, well, disturbing in some ways, that blood sacrifice was still a key part of the process.
Yes, definitely. It was about giving up the most valuable thing, life, to try and restore balance.
Right.
And I think it's interesting to think about how those ideas of sacrifice and atonement, how they've changed over time.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Because, I mean, we don't really see blood sacrifice anymore in most religions.
Right.
But the ideas behind it, they haven't completely gone away.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of religions still talk about sacrifice, but maybe not literally sacrificing an animal.
Okay.
Maybe it's about sacrificing your time, your
Right.
money, or even your own desires, for something bigger than yourself.
Oh, I see.
Like, think about the idea of self-sacrifice or giving up something important to you to help someone else.
Right.
It's like an echo of that ancient idea, giving something precious to show your devotion or to try and make things right.
So the ways we sacrifice might be different, but that need to sacrifice, it's still there.
Yeah, I think so. And it says something really important about us, about being human. We want to be better, to connect with something larger than ourselves, even if it means giving something up.
That's a really powerful thought. And it brings us back to everything we've been talking about today about atonement and purification. These ideas, they're just as relevant today as they were back then.
I think so too, because when you get down to it, atonement is about admitting when we've messed up, taking responsibility and trying to make things right.
Yeah.
It's about becoming better people. And that's something we never really stop working on.
It's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
It is.
Whether we're asking for forgiveness, making up for our mistakes, or just trying to live a better life.
Exactly. And even though the specific rituals and practices might be different all over the world, that desire for atonement, for cleansing, for being whole, that's something we all share.
It is. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up our deep dive into these ancient atonement rituals.
I agree.
They might seem strange to us now, but they really give us a look into this timeless human struggle, trying to figure out right and wrong, seeking forgiveness, and finding that path to renewal. We might not be sacrificing animals or sending goats off into the wilderness, but those core themes, atonement and purification, they're still very much a part of our world. So next time you see someone apologizing or doing something selfless, or even just taking some time for quiet reflection, think about these ancient rituals and how they're still shaping the way we see ourselves and our place in the world. Until next time, keep diving deep.